Welcome to the party. I'm not here right now, but I want you to listen very carefully. These guys are very funny. Enough talk. It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name's Steve. My co-host is Pete.
Hello.
This episode we're talking about Spenser Confidential from 2020. This is a film on Netflix with Mark Wahlberg, Winston Duke and Arkin in the leads.
Indeed.
So I will say up front that I'm not really familiar with the character of Spenser. I know that he was created by Robert Parker from the novels. What I didn't realise is that according to information, a quick bit of research that I did, there were 40 Spenser novels.
Wow. He's quicker writer than you.
Yeah, tell me about it. And then, of course, there was the TV series in the mid-1980s. Yep. I was too young.
So I'm old. I was there. No, I saw... It wasn't. I think I saw reruns. This is my get out clause.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
So I don't remember that. I remember it's one of those things where you go, oh, I'll watch a bit of it. I think I maybe saw 3 or 4 episodes, but it ran for 3 seasons apparently. I think mid-80s, and then there were 4 TV movies up until the mid-90s. So I remember the Hawk character, Avery Brooks.
Of course, yes, that's the only link I have aware.
Yeah, and obviously it's Robert Ulrich in the main part. It's one of those shows I've got a sense of it, but I don't really I wasn't watching this ticking off a list of things. I've seen a few things online where there are people that really like the novels who don't think this is close enough, or like the TV show. But I just took it as in its own right, I suppose. Took it at face value.
Yeah. So I everything I'm going to talk about is just a case of from the film. I don't know anything about the characters beyond being familiar with some of the names of Hawk and the others, and I know that the final location for the film, Wonderland, has a tie-in to the novels. But apart from that, I couldn't really tell you anything about it. So I'm not really going to touch on that because I'd just be guessing or reading stuff off the wiki page.
Same here. So the interesting thing, I think, it's interesting how Netflix works, because you kind of see a trailer, or you see a very small image in a box, and you go, oh, Mark Wahlberg, oh, Spenser, oh, okay, I'll watch this. And then you suddenly find out who directed it and wrote it, which is very, I think, as cinema fans, you go back years ago, it'd be like, well, who's behind this movie? And now you kind of go, oh, this looks interesting. And then you find out more. It's a really weird shift. It's almost like stumbling across a film on TV. So this is directed by Peter Berg, who's the last thing I saw that he did was Mile 22, did Deepwater Horizon. I also found out from looking on IMDb that he co-wrote the Losers screenplay, but he didn't direct it, which makes me think maybe he was attached as a director early on and then maybe drifted away and got a writing credit, potentially.
Oh.
But he's an actor, isn't he, turned director. He tends to, I don't think he's in this, but in a lot of his films he tends to make little cameos. He did Battleship as well, but I've never seen that.
So he also... In terms of directing, if you go back, he did things like Hancock with Will Smith.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I'm trying to remember some of the other ones he's done. Oh, there are some really other fairly big films with big names that he's been, attached to. So it's not like he's someone who's come along and said, right, this is my first crack at a big film.
No,
he's done quite a few things in the past. I think he did. That's right. So he did The Kingdom, 2007. So that's Jennifer Garner, Jamie Foxx. So that's like an early version almost of the Sicario type film.
It is.
Kind of action thing. So he's done action before. He's done comedy. He's been an actor himself in things like Alias that I've seen him in. With Jennifer Garner again. So he's got a connection there. He's worked with her in the past. But yes, so he's a well-established director. That's for sure.
So then I saw the writers' names come up, and the first name came up, and it was someone called Sean O'Keefe, who I've never heard of.
No.
And I looked him up, and he's written video games, and he's got, I think, 5 or 6 other screenplays in development, but not been made yet. So this is his first thing to go to screen.
Yeah.
And he does production. But then I saw the second name. Did you recognise the second name of the second writer?
It's familiar, but I couldn't tell you what he's worked on.
So Brian Helgeland is one of my favourite screenwriters, so I was quite surprised to see his name on this. So he wrote Conspiracy Theory, which is a film I love.
Brilliant.
I have the printed off old school script somewhere of that. He wrote and directed, but it wasn't his version that got into cinemas, Payback.
Yeah.
He wrote Man on Fire. Mystic River, did the adaptation of LA Confidential, but he's also got some uncredited work, which is, I think, this is obviously credited, but I think he's the kind of writer they bring in to punch up the dialogue and make it and give it a bit more kind of brevity.
Right.
So he worked on Salt.
Oh yeah, which we've covered.
Yep, the Daredevil movie. And Bourne Supremacy. They're three of his uncredited kind of, a bit like Shane Black on Predator in a way, kind of been brought in to kind of to kind of make things a bit more, to make the dialogue sing a little bit more. And there are a few scenes in this that do feel very kind of in his wheelhouse, but it'd be interesting to know which way around. I'm assuming O'Keefe wrote the script and then Helgeland did a rewrite. That would be my guess based on their experience levels.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I was quite excited. I thought, and he did. He wrote and directed the The Craze film with Tom Hardy.
Legend.
Yeah, he wrote and directed that as well. And A Knight's Tale, he wrote and directed that too.
So there again, a well-established writer and a well-established actor. But you've also got a very big name in Mark Wahlberg. He's done a lot of action and he's done a lot of comedy, and this film falls somewhere in between the two, I would say.
Yes, I would agree.
Do you recognise the actor who plays Hawk?
Yes, from Black Panther.
Winston Duke, that's right. Yeah. So he's in the Avengers films, he's in Black Panther. He's been in films like Us, which was the film directed by Jordan Peele, the horror one.
Oh, I haven't. I've seen Get Out, but I haven't seen Us yet.
And also I've seen him in Person of Interest. Winston Duke was in the last sort of 2 seasons of that, playing an important character. So that was... good to see him doing something a bit different again.
Yeah.
Of course, Alan Arkin has been in everything.
He's a brilliant actor. It's just like, I think we've got to jump ahead a bit, but like some of the casting in this, like Alan Arkin, Bokeem Woodbine is in here. He's been in loads of things. Mark Maron, who I think is great as well. So it's like, we've talked about this before with a few of these kind of films. It's like, what I quite like the modern thing now is, you make an action movie, but you put really good actors in it, not just people that... Saying that, Mark Wahlberg can or his stunt double can certainly handle themselves. That's for sure, in this movie.
I've been really enjoying Alan Arkin in The Kaminsky Method lately.
Oh, I still haven't got to that.
So funny, and he's so good in it. Now, the unknown name for me is Iliza Shlesinger.
I thought you were going to say Post Malone.
Is a stand-up comedian that I've been told. Now, she's done some acting, of course, but from what I've been told, she's a stand-up.
That kind of makes sense because she's very funny and very brassy. Is that a word you can use these days?
Yeah.
She's kind of very upfront. It's interesting because the film is set in Boston, which is where Mark Wahlberg is actually from.
Yep.
I believe. Even the film actually opens with a song by the band Boston, just to hammer that home in case anyone missed it. And it's weird because I watched Ray Donovan. You don't watch that, do you?
No.
I haven't watched that. So that's a show which is set in LA and then it moves to New York, but it's Liv Schreiber, and the main family in it are from Boston, and they're from an area of Boston called Southie, which I've never heard of before, which is kind of this...
Thanks to Good Will Hunting.
Well, that's a valid point. So Good Will Hunting and this film also has Southie in it as well. So it's kind of... from those three things, I've got a very definite impression about that part of the world. But she really fits in with a lot of this film. Reminds me of Ray Donovan, but she really fits in that kind of upfront, kind of in your face woman that's going to not back down and going to be very, very honest with you at all times.
So there are several of her shows apparently on Netflix which I've not watched.
Okay.
But it's I don't know what her comedy's like at all, so I can't really say. But I thought she was very good, as you say, in this role of playing character Sissy, who is Spenser, played by Mark Wahlberg, his ex sort of on-off girlfriend, I'd say.
Yeah, they're certainly on at one point in the film.
Yes, they are. So, having said all that and talked about it, around it, what did you think of the film?
I liked it. I'm very quiet.
Reluctant and quiet.
I do.
I liked it.
I think it's weird when we come to these films completely fresh.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of, we're doing a show and it's really easy to talk about a film we've seen loads of times.
Yeah.
And the challenge with this is you're watching it, enjoying it and analysing it at the same time. But I really enjoyed it. I kind of, part of me feels like, is this a guilty pleasure? I'm like, well, why am I feeling guilty? If I'm enjoying it, I'm enjoying it. And I think Mark Wahlberg hasn't got the biggest range in the world, but in the right roles, he's really good. And I think this role really suited him. And I think it just kind of, and at times it had that Lethal Weapon vibe of something very funny happens, and then straight afterwards something very threatening.
Yeah,
I don't think the balance was quite as good, but I enjoyed the ride. There's a few scenes that just feel like they've come out of nowhere, like the sex scene, like the being chased by a dog for ages scene. There's lots of dogs in this film.
Yeah,
there's probably the most dogs I've seen in a film that isn't about dogs.
Yep.
But yeah, I think I liked it.
Are you waiting for me to talk you out of it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know if I'm. Sometimes when we do these things, a bag will be added or removed by the time we finish talking. But it's. I think because it's an action comedy, it's a bit different as well. But yeah, what did you think?
I knew that was coming. So I liked it, but I had some problems with it.
Okay.
Since watching it, I've then gone and read some other people's reviews of the film.
I thought you were going to say the 40 books then.
Yeah, I've now read the 40 books in the week between us talking about it, and so I've read some of the reviews that people have made about this film, and I agree with some of their points, but some of them I think they just need to chill out, take a breath, and just stop treating every film like it's got to be, Schindler's List, because it isn't. It's never designed to be, and while it might not be like the books, I can't comment on that. All I can say is that as a fun action comedy, it's good. If you compare this to something like Six Underground, which was an absolute train wreck of a film, it's a mess. That's also designed to be an action comedy. This is miles ahead of that. And I didn't see anybody catering that nearly as much as they did this in the reviews. Probably because of the connections to the book, probably because of the world it's set in and all the rest of it. But for me, who hasn't read the books, I'm just going to go with what I've seen. And it was pretty good.
I know what you mean. Like, because I think the age we're in, the internet, everyone having a loud voice, people have to go, this is the best film I've ever seen or the worst film I've ever seen. There's no kind of in the middle. Yep. Some things can just be quite good. And I think this was quite good. And I again, when I turned my analytical brain off, I was laughing in the right places. I cared what happened to the characters. I enjoyed the action scenes. Had I been like 16, 17, I would have thought this was amazing. And I don't mean that as in a bad way. I think it's more of a just, cynical older thing. But it made me go, oh, do you know what? I want to watch Two Guns again. Yeah.
Well, I think we're more critical now as well. It's not just the fact that we've seen more films. I think that can be good and bad. As you say, when you're 16, you've not seen as many films and you're just going along with the ride. Now we compare it to lots of other things that we've seen. We've seen a lot more of the world, as it were, so we can reflect on things that are accurate and not. Whereas when you're 16, you just absorb it for what it is, and it's only when you rewatch a film later, you and I our points have tended to go down a bit because we're looking at it and gone, oh, that's a bit insensitive, oh, that's not right, or that's a bit racist, or whatever it might be. But 20 years ago, you didn't pick up on those things. You just thought, oh, that was hilarious. And now I can't watch Mind Your Language and stuff like that anymore. Yeah. So, but at the time, it was perfectly okay.
Yeah. And I think there's a bit in here, I was like, oh, they're going to drive the truck now, and that's ridiculous. I thought, well, hang on, I didn't have a problem with the monster truck in Roadhouse. So just chill. They missed a trick by not playing Black Betty. I'm assuming they couldn't get the rights to that song to play it when the truck called Black Betty was being driven. But
that's a shame.
Yeah. I mean, one slight negative I had in the first half, if Hawke's character felt super underdeveloped and almost one-dimensional. Yeah. You didn't really get to know him. You just kind of got to know other people's view of him. But then I think the second half of the film, they kind of rectified that. It's one of the best Batman conversations outside of a Batman film.
It is, yes. I don't think they did enough with Hawke. There's that initial thing where they set it up where Spence comes out of prison and finds that he's got a roommate. Yeah. And his dog, Pearl, likes Hawke more than him because he's been there for the last few years and he's looking after him. And they're sharing a room and he's not happy about that. And yet, 5 minutes later, he's training Hawke. And then 5 minutes after that, they're in having lunch somewhere and Hawke's like thanking him. And I'm like, okay, so that initial kind of they don't get along thing has basically evaporated. So the antagonism doesn't really exist.
Yeah, you don't get that spikiness, the buddy cop spikiness between them. They just kind of...
They ignore it, just brush it under the carpet.
Yeah, and I think there's an element, I suppose, Alan Arkin's character is the link between them, and their respect for him is kind of... But no, you're right, those bits aren't particularly well thought through. I mean, it starts off with a really good and funny fight against the white supremacists in the prison.
Yeah.
I think, that made me realise, okay, yeah, Mark Wahlberg is cut. If it's like this little scrapper of a guy, then he's very well cast, to play that part.
Yeah, that first fight scene was good. I didn't realise they were white supremacists because none of them had those kind of tattoos on them. A lot of them had tattoos, and they were all pretty nasty blokes, and I thought they'd been hired by someone or, send off. But it isn't until later you find out who they are. Yeah. But he does take a punch very well, Spenser, and he knows how to handle himself. Yeah. And the guy starts kicking him. He's like, "Are you kicking me? What are you doing? Did you just kick me?" Which I thought was quite funny. Yeah. You learn how to punch first, and then you can kick, as he says to Hawk later on.
Yes, and I think that Hawk's arc is almost he can't punch, even though he wants to do MMA, and he's huge.
Yep.
But then he somehow gets coached by Spenser, which doesn't really... At that point, I was like, this feels like a TV show. It felt really slow build and no real plot.
Yeah.
And then the second half, they kind of ramp up the plot a lot. Yeah, it's kind of... Yeah, but it's interesting, I said, the lethal weapon bit before, there are some scenes you just think, like the toilet fight, it feels a little bit Shane Black. Mm-hmm. Then the toilet sex scene felt a little bit like Crank. It does kind of... It probably, like, if 20% of it was a little bit more aligned with itself, if that makes sense,
right? I
think it would have been stronger. There's a few little scenes you just go, that doesn't really. So you said you had some reservations before. So was that so the Hawk character being underdeveloped? Was that one of them?
Yes, I think they could have done a lot more with him. We know that the actor is capable. I've seen him in other things, as I've said, and I know that he's very good at playing different kind of things. Yeah, yes, he's a big guy, and yes, he plays a tough guy, but they don't really do much with it, as you say. We know that he's training and he wants to be a fighter. He likes his music. He mentioned, see, they start to do stuff. There's a thing like he has that conversation with Spenser whilst they're having lunch about his dad, and he starts to go into his background, and then don't go anywhere with it. And he says, I don't want to talk about that. And he says, fair enough. I'm like, okay, so why do we touch on that? It's that thing of if you show the thing in the first scene, you got to pay it off later on.
Yeah, it's like his replacement the guy who's partners with Driscoll, who replaces him. Yeah, there's a scene of him at the door being an absolute arsehole, and you think, okay, that's somehow. I don't think we saw him again after that.
No, we didn't.
No, and I just think, well, it feels like on the cutting room floor, there's a scene of him knocking him out.
Yeah,
or saying something clever to him, or something. But I don't know, maybe his role there at the time is to kind of maybe divert you away from Driscoll. So you think, he's a decent guy with this, not very nice partner, rather than him being the one pulling the strings.
Yeah. So the start of the film, there's a lot of, it's not set up, but they tell it in a non-linear fashion. We see that he's getting out of prison, and then we go back to find out why he was put there in the first place, with the stuff to do with punching out his boss on the front lawn of his house for one reason that we thought, but then we go back a second time. So that's another kind of problem that I had, that I understand why they did it in one reason, because you're revisiting it to find out there's actually more to the scene than we thought the first time around. We just thought he was punching his boss because he's upset about one thing and his boss was beating his wife. Yeah. That's why he did it. But then you go back and find out it's more than that. And it's that thing of, if it's a PI and you're investigating stuff in a novel, it's fairly linear because that's just the way things tend to be. A leads to B leads to C. You find a clue, it does this, you go to someone else. So that was another problem I had with the film, that it jumps around a lot. And at one point, he has been a PI because he goes to, even though he says, Driscoll says, you're being a private investigator now? And he's like, ha, 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 ha. But then he tells Driscoll everything, which was, I thought, a bit stupid. Yeah. I know you probably think, he trusts his old partner, but it just seems stupid, like he'd give him everything, having then known that Driscoll had been there because he'd seen the toothpick. So I think that they could have done it in a more linear fashion, But then I guess they wanted it to start with something a bit more exciting than having a fight in the prison, does it?
Yeah, because you're working kind of past, present, and then almost future, because it's him in the prison. Then you find out why he was in prison, and then you find out what happens to his captain on the day he's released. So there's quite a lot to take on board at the start, and it does feel like Spenser's going to get blamed for killing him because he gets killed with a machete. Machetes a lot in this film, but it's not really about that either. Yeah, I know what you mean. I didn't know if they were trying to keep kind of giving you flashbacks with more information, as if as Spenser learnt more, we saw more. Because there's a scene where he listens to a wire recording.
Yeah.
But we actually see that scene. He's listening to it, I guess, picturing it in his head, and we see that. So I didn't know if they were trying to say that as he pieces stuff together, his memories will start to change because he's starting to expand on what he saw, and then we're getting to experience that as well. But if that's what it wasn't that clear.
I think that's a case of the differences between the books and the film, because if it was in a book, you just have the dialogue on the page, whereas because it's on a film, you can't have Mark Wahlberg sat in a car for 5 minutes listening to something. You can't just do that. You have to show it. So that's why I think that's just a translation from the different medium.
Yeah.
Slight deviation, but it's relevant. I've currently been reading the Expanse books, which is a series of sci-fi novels, and then going back and watching the TV series and seeing the differences, seeing what they've changed and thinking about the reasons why and the way you communicate things. And so looking at this, I think that's another example of you can't have him just sat in the car listening to stuff. Whereas if you show it and then you do the fade too and they actually show you what he's listening to, it's a lot more visually interesting for the viewer. So I think that's why it was done, rather than it particularly being, a clue to show you more.
Okay. Makes sense.
But as you say, there is a lot of jumping around. The other thing that we then have another jump back, which is later on when we find, I want to call him Charlie Brown, Tracksuit Charlie Brown, is it?
No, it's Tracksuit something, yeah.
Anyway, but whatever he's called, the kind of something Charlie Brown character. And then we have to jump back to find out why Spence doesn't like him.
Yes.
And I think that was one too much. I think if they just said he's a really dodgy guy, he's responsible for killing someone, and I know it, but I can't prove it, that would have been, enough. But we get a lot of that. So that gives Hawk a reason to go and do something a bit more, which I know he loves animals because he loves Pearl the dog, and obviously loves a cat as well because he carves it into the guy's car. But it seems like one step too far when you're just building momentum in the present to then jump back into the past again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing that, if it's an Edgar Wright movie or if it's a Guy Ritchie movie, they do that, they might be doing that all the time and it becomes the thing of the film. It's the way that the film is done. But it wasn't really, it was just kind of, it wasn't done enough to make it a thing. It wasn't like Polar or something like that, which has got that kind of stylistic thing to it. It felt like it was one of the many things they were throwing at us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we then find out that obviously the cops are crooked. We find out that his ex-partner's crooked. We find out that the 4 guys that beat him up in the toilets, at least one of them is crooked. Mm-hmm. And they're all involved in something. But then becomes a question of, well, what are they involved in and what is it all about? And who killed Captain Boylan, who he doesn't like, but equally, no one's potentially pointing the finger at him. He's a suspect, kind of.
Yeah, they kind of mention what a coincidence the day you come out. It's like, well, I think that's more than a coincidence. That feels like, there's enough motive to at least have a conversation with him in an official capacity, which doesn't happen. Yeah, there's a few things like that where you kind of, it's good to keep you on your toes. It doesn't give you the things that you're, expecting. But at the same time, you kind of go, well, why didn't that thing get sorted out?
Yeah. So
why wasn't that more of a thing than they're alluding to?
That's what I was going towards. That if they say that, it happens, they set it up so it happened on the day that he came out. If it was coincidence for them to kill him and just happened to be on that day, that's really unfortunate and a bit silly. If they'd done it on purpose and planted a bloody cleaver at his house, even if it was later disproven that it wasn't him, it puts more pressure on Spenser, and it would raise the stakes, but they don't do that.
Yeah, and it would have given him much more of a motive to do what he's doing.
Yeah,
because it's almost like he's
the other guy.
Yeah, because his whole thing is I'm going to learn to drive a truck and then I'm going to leave. And then it's almost like, well, this interesting case is making me stay. But it would also help, you say about making the kind of rise in tension thing, but the partner who is killed, who they pin it on,
yeah,
like if his wife thought that Spenser had killed him, that would have made that dynamic a bit more interesting as well, because he'd have had to work a lot harder to convince her, that he's actually there to help.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all
seemed like
valid
an
points.
unfortunate coincidence, which I don't think you should have, and then roll Spenser into it. And his ex-partner could have, there again, it created more tension because he was involved and he was there, whereas he could have gone, no, it's not Spenser, but he's the one that's actually planted the cleaver at his house, or they find it in his garden, or whatever it might be, So that thing of he's playing both sides against each other and distracting everybody from the truth, which is he's involved. So there's a lot of good stuff there that I think they could have used, but they didn't, and I don't know why it's then in the film at all.
It's interesting as well because it happens a lot in films, but like he kind of lets Driscoll know on purpose that he knows he's involved.
Yeah,
almost to kind of tease him out by. But there didn't seem to be a reason for that either. Specifically, I guess it helped him find out more information. But yeah, I know what you mean.
He didn't then follow Driscoll though, did he? After that,
no.
To see where he's going or to see who he spoke to, or
no, he just went to get the van basically. Went after the merchandise.
Yeah, it's an odd one. When he knows that they're coming after him, he obviously tries to go and protect Henry, and Henry's not there because they've already got to him. So he constantly seems to be one step behind everybody else. He's not the brightest spark, but we know that. He's doing the best that he can. Sissy says that you've got the right. You've got this noble kind of can't give up spirit, which is nice, but equally it gets you in a lot of trouble. And Hawke says to him, you seem to get beat up a lot, but every time it happens, you come away with a bit more information. So he's just stumbling from one thing to another whilst trying to do his best. And I guess that's part of the character and part of the charm is that he isn't the brightest, he isn't the best, he isn't the strongest, but he always seems to get through and find the right answers or help the right people,
he's like a dog with a bone, which is why they put so many dogs in the film.
There are only two. Well, okay, I was going to say there are only two, but there's
a room
lot
full
in
of dogs.
she runs a dog.
In Venice, she does look after dogs.
Yes.
But,
She's an independent entrepreneur, remember, Pete?
This is true. But then, he gets quite badly, attacked by a dog, and then you get the dogs looking. It's a drug sniffing dog and stuff. It's kind of, we should focus on some of the good. I enjoyed this film, but it doesn't. I don't. The way we're talking about it, I feel like I didn't, but I know I did. I know I did.
Tell me about some of the things you liked.
I just thought it was very funny. I thought there were times it wasn't like the world's most sparkling dialogue, but I think that some of the things, again, it helps the people. Like Alan Arkin is brilliant and very dry. Mark Maron, I could watch in virtually anything. I thought he was really well cast as the journalist.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just things like that. I mean, yes, it was kind of obvious, and yes, it was in the trailer, but like when Spenser goes into all the Mexican food and then the machete guys are attacking him, and Hawke is outside with his headphones on, so doesn't hear it.
Yeah.
And then he reverses the car in. That felt, it felt like a very old school action comedy set piece.
Yeah.
But I thought that was good. And I thought, say the again, all the fights I thought were good. To be fair, they weren't not particularly long because it tended to be like you say, he'd try his best, then get knocked out or knocked over, or something would change. But I thought those bits were good.
I like Hawke's fight with about the four blokes in the kitchens.
Oh, and at the end, when he
punches a couple of them out, and then he goes, "Yeah, that's how you punch. That's how you do it." And then there's that one guy that's left with a machete, and he kind of looks at him and is like, "Come on, then." And the bloke just drops it and runs off.
There's a nice moment where the lady whose cop husband has died, and then not only have the cops killed her husband, they've also then turned her house over looking for what it turns out to be the wire.
Yeah.
And that was I thought, again, that thing of like comedy and then emotional moments, I thought that was quite, because you did put yourself in their shoes and think, oh, they've been through enough. Let all this. And the little boy's looking at his bed, which has been tipped over, and he just turns to Hawke and says, "Are you a giant?" And he's like, maybe. And he's like, are you a good one or a bad one? And he goes, I'm a good one. And he goes, could you help me turn over my bed?
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a really sweet moment in amongst all the chaos, really.
Yeah. There were some touching moments, like when she finds her husband dead in the car and just completely loses it. Because when that scene begins, you have no idea who she is or what's going on.
No.
Or what the connection is. You just kind of dropped into it because you've just been following Spenser up to that point, really. And then suddenly you've got this other strand of the story coming in. They did try to do lots of weird little character moments. So when, like, Captain Boylan, before he's attacked and before he goes to the school bus yard, he's on the phone to his daughter about her homework.
Yeah.
Do you remember this? And he's going, no, I think you've really done really well, dear, and this, that, and the other. And I was like, what? And it just felt... I understand what they were trying to do, like, show that he's not a bad guy. And then later on they say... The other cop was saying to him, he's a good cop, he did really well, he's really good at this and good at that, and he's not a bad man. So then you begin to wonder, if he's a father and a good husband and a good boss, why was he killed? But equally, Spenser knows that he's crooked. So, I don't know.
Because it's not even as if... Because when you find out that he's kind of giving his partner evidence to give to the feds, he doesn't feel like he's doing that because he's like, oh, my daughter, or I feel bad about how I treated my wife, or this, I want to change. He's just backed into a corner and has got no choice. And I think with the homework, I was waiting for, again, the writer me was waiting for, at some point, the subject of that homework is going to be a clue or something, or linked to something. No, it was just like a little... Yeah, there is that thing, and people say, give your incidental characters an eye patch or a limp or an interesting hobby, just to stop them being bland. But it's weird when it's kind of, it doesn't feel like there's any reason for it. The other thing I found was that the feds were being fed this information, and then he goes to them with that information, and they go, "Oh, it's not enough."
Yeah,
and they didn't really say why. They just went, "It's not enough." And I thought, "Oh, are they crooked?" One of the feds does get a funny scene at the end when they find all the drugs. One
of the feds is very weird. Like, I thought he was a comedy actor, or there's something, because he seemed so over the top, his character. I've looked him up. He's not. He's just a normal actor, but his character is so bizarre. Yeah. It just felt like a caricature of someone, and I don't know why he was done that way.
Yeah. It was interesting as well, because Brian Helgeland did some of the writing on this and wrote Payback. Well, Payback has got two feds that are trailing the main guy that he goes back to. So there was really weird parallels with that. But again, it was like, we've introduced these feds. Oh, that must be really important. Is it? Or is it just a way of getting this wire bit in? Okay, well, if we take him, then the evidence is sorted. Oh, take the evidence, no, it's not enough evidence. That I just felt it. There's a few things that felt a little bit contrived just to keep the story moving. It was quite clever that, like, the Boylan, despite being like a dodgy cop and a wife beater, gets the state funeral, and then the partner, who actually was a decent guy because he's suspected, doesn't get one, and then at the end they find out he's going to have a state funeral. That kind of, those little things are nice, I thought.
Yeah, good payoffs.
Yeah, but then we'll jump right to the end, I guess. But it's very much set up for a sequel.
Yeah, because they put that bit in about his friend who is someone from school that he knows who is a good guy, and yet now he's been accused of something else. And Spenser's like, no, it's definitely not him. It's definitely not him. And all of his friends want him to leave it alone. But they basically set that up so that he then goes on to another case. Yeah.
So I was trying to work out, it's like, are they basically saying we're going to do a sequel? Are they doing a bit of a nod and a wink to, well, this used to be a TV show? Because at times I almost feel like they're intentionally making it feel like an old school TV show. And then that bit, it's almost like, is that kind of look to camera, kind of end of the Fall Guy kind of, oh, here we go again, which... So yeah, I'm trying to work out if it was like a meta thing or not. I was disappointed in a way that neither of the TV show actors made a cameo, because that's usually the thing in these things, isn't it? Like in Starsky and Hutch or whatever, you get, they do the film version of an old show, and then you get at least one of the people back.
Well, they could have had Avery Brooks in, but they couldn't have had the main guy.
Because he passed away.
Yeah, Robert Urich passed away.
Awkward.
Yeah.
What a way to tell me, Steve.
A little bit tougher. Yeah. They sometimes get them in. I don't know.
There was a Hawk spin-off show that ran for a couple of seasons after the main show finished.
With
Avery Brooks, yeah.
Wow.
A Man Called Hawk, I believe it was called.
Wow. I really missed out on this stuff in the 80s. I was too busy I don't know, playing in the park, not watching television.
Did you watch Hardcastle and McCormick? That's probably too early for you as well.
Nope, didn't watch them either.
Scarecrow, Mrs. King.
I know the name, never watched it.
Remington Steele.
Same again, those names.
Okay. I am. The couple of years difference between us is very important.
It's showing your age. You're showing.
And I was from such a rural area. I literally had no way of going anywhere. So it's like TV again then.
Wow. There's peep into Pete's childhood. Okay.
Yep.
Real insight. Really good.
Thanks.
So the big kind of end scene is all to do with this Wonderland that was a dog track that's now abandoned, and they're going to turn it into a giant casino.
Dog track, another dog-related thing.
Yeah. Everyone loves dogs.
Yeah.
You can kill as many people as you want, but if you hurt an animal... Ooh.
Well, interestingly, that goes back to the payback in because I watched the director's cut of that the other day, which is the Helgeland version.
Yeah.
The dog does die.
Ooh.
In the Mel Gibson version, where he locked him out of the edit suite and got it re-edited, the dog survived.
Well,
that wasn't the only change in the film.
I thought you said that was the only change.
No, that was one of the main changes. Quite different.
Okay. So they're all going to get rid of the dog track, and they're going to build this casino. And you've got crooked cops putting money in. You've got the drug dealers who are going to be supplying the drugs. You've got the Trinidadians who've got the muscle, I guess, with the cleavers. And it's all bent towards this, and this is what they were kind of covering up. And you've got a whole ring of dirty cops involved, and Boylan was going to tell the feds, but as you said, not because he's a good guy, not because he wants to help out people, but the fact that he had no choice, really.
He wanted a deal. He wanted to get the best deal he could.
Yeah. Whereas Driscoll just seems to be doing it because he's a bit of an arse, to be honest.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that there again you get a bit of a scene with him and his son saying, "You must do this." "Oh yes, sir." And you shouldn't do that. "Yes, sir." And then straight away Spencer's there, and it just kind of undermines it because you realise that Driscoll's dodgy.
Yeah, and again, his son is watching that conversation.
Yeah.
But for no real reason.
Yeah.
It does almost feel like there's another version of this film that's about half an hour longer, where all these little character things are more meaningful. Unless it is literally to go, anyone who's a parent has more than one side to them. I don't know. It does feel a little bit... I think the central relationship between was it Sissy and Spencer is quite well done, because it is that kind of almost love-hate thing, and it's quite cleverly... Well, the trailer actually makes it look like she left him for someone else when he was in prison, but it turns out that she's like, well, I couldn't just wait for you, but she did. It's quite cleverly kind of turned a little bit, and their relationship is quite interesting.
Well, sort of, but she's also on a date with someone when he then corners him in the bathroom, and it's like, whoa!
I'd forgotten that fact.
That he ended up in the same restaurant as her by choice. And she's like, "Are you following me?" And he's like, "Well, you followed me into the toilet, so no. Are you following me?" But yes, she was on a date with someone else, which is okay. Not what you'd expect, but clearly she still has feelings for him.
Yes.
And she knows him better than anyone else because she proves it several times. And she says, "Do you know what I like? It's the 5 minutes afterwards where she has clarity of thought, and so does he, and they can actually talk without fighting."
Yeah.
And which they do. And then some home truths are kind of come out. So there's some good moments in this film, but as you say, there's a lot of weird inconsistencies that really bothered me. Them showing stuff and never doing it, paying them off.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
So, is there anything else?
I've never heard anyone called an enabling Alfred before, though. And that scene I thought was beautifully done with the kind of you're Batman, you're Batman, and he's Robin. I'm not Robin. Yes, you are. You're Robin. Who am I then? You're Alfred. You're an enabling Alfred. It's got that really fast dialogue, and I just thought it was very funny.
Yes, I did laugh at that. I admit. Yeah. There were. I was expecting it to be funnier, to be honest.
Okay.
There were some bits where I did laugh, and there's some bits that, were amusing, but I thought it would be a lot funnier. Maybe that was just a misconception on my part coming into it, but the trailer set it up to be more Lethal Weapon-y, I guess.
Yeah, I think that there's some bits that there's some jokes that didn't land, like they're in the van and they've got the two guys and they're hitting their heads and stuff. It's all very kind of... Three Stooges, and then, which again is Lethal Weapon, but then they realise there's another third guy in the back,
Yeah.
It's stuff like that which are kind of, I guess, are played for laughs, but it maybe not in the right scenes, really. Yeah, I find it quite funny at times. I don't know if it's I think there's just quite a charming set of characters that kind of helped kind of keep it going, keep it moving along.
Okay. So, is there anything else you want to cover, or do you want to talk about some scores?
No, I think that's probably that's probably it. I don't think there's much else to say.
No, not without going through the whole film, which we don't do anymore.
No.
Okay, I'm going to let you go first because I've got an idea of what your score is going to be, and I know what mine is. But, but let's see if I'm right.
Write in an envelope, put it behind your back, and post it to me, and I will look at it on the next episode.
Okay.
So
off you go.
I went into this with no expectation whatsoever. I knew that it was related to a TV show I'd seen a couple of episodes of, but I didn't remember it well enough to know much apart from the names of the two main characters.
Yep.
I like Mark Wahlberg in some films, not as much in others, but he's in certain films. Like I like the modern Italian Job. I may be the only person that does.
Yep.
But it's that kind of nice. The kind of the way he is here. I think it suits him. I like the fact it's set in Boston. It's a bit different from other movies. I thought some of it was very funny, possibly more so than you did. It just was a bit old school fun, really, and that more of these kind of films is a good thing. I think it makes me happy to watch films like this rather than something that's too dour and too kind of caught up in its own self-importance. There are some issues with it. It certainly is not perfect. It is a little bit kind of all over the shop at times. There are a couple of scenes we just look at the screen and go, why? Mm-hmm. But with all that considered, I'm going to give it a solid 3 bags of action.
I knew that's what you were going to give it.
Well, there's only 5 to choose
from. Envelope.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I've written down in the envelope. I'll post it to you so you can approve it.
Okay, thank you. Now you said it, I'm not sure we could be writing it right now. It's not a video call.
Yep, that's right. Okay, so I wasn't familiar with the stuff, with the books or Parker, so I'm basing it purely on this. I think the film had a lot of potential. I think they came in with the best intentions of making it a comedy, action sort of thriller with some PI aspects because of the kind of the origin of the character and the way he's digging into things relentlessly. I think Mark Wahlberg was good in the role, but he didn't seem to have a lot to do. Given that he was the lead character, he did a lot of standing around and staring at stuff, I think. Hawk was underused, definitely. Winston Duke was underused. I think they could have done a lot more with him. We talked about some of the inconsistencies where they show things and then don't pay them off. Little character moments that are a bit odd. Yeah, but it's fun. It's entertaining. It kept me focused for the whole of the film. It's under 2 hours long, I think. So it's not exactly a really long film. But yeah, it was all right. It was okay. I'd say it's entertaining, but fairly forgettable. I could watch it in like 2 years' time and go, yeah, that was all right, and not really remember too much about it. Like there aren't any moments that will particularly stand out. Perhaps the fight at the start of the film, perhaps the fight in the Mexican restaurant, or the one in the kitchen will stand out. But I'm not going to say, oh, there was that brilliant scene where they talk about their dads and because it didn't have that the emotional weight, I think.
Okay.
So given all of that, and because we don't do half bags and the way we score things, I'm going to give it 2 bags.
Ooh, okay.
Which sounds mean and sounds tough, but given what we've given 3 for some other films, I just don't think it's there. It's all right. 3 is 2 was it was okay for me. 3 is it was good. 4 was it was amazing, and 5 was this is the best film since sliced bread. So
half bags is tough.
That's it.
Sometimes.
So I'm saying 2. It was okay. That's it. I think.
Okay. Well, I think that that the 2 to 3 variance between us is sums us up. I think that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So, have you seen Spenser Confidential? Have you watched it recently on Netflix? It only came out in the last few days. Have you read any of the books? What are your thoughts? Don't get too heavy on that because obviously this is quite a different thing and we're not as familiar. But get in touch with us and let us know. You can email us. You can come onto the Facebook group and talk about it there. We're on Twitter. Don't forget to go into iTunes, leave us a review. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Right, Pete? Wrap us up.
Thank you for listening, if indeed you still are.
Good night.
Good night.
You have been listening to Bags of Action. You'd better stick around for the next episode, because if you're lying, I'll be back.